The situation of children in armed conflict is not getting better. It's getting worse. Our children are our future, and we have to protect them, and war has rules. And sadly, we are seeing an increase in these violations. And indeed, a year has gone by so quickly, but I could imagine for the people of Gaza, this would seem like a lifetime, and not much has changed. In fact, as you mentioned, things have gotten worse. But we cannot lose hope. We have to continue to call for a ceasefire, and in the first place, because that's the only way we would be able to get humanitarian aid in at scale. But I also believe that the June meeting that's upcoming on the two-state solution offers an opportunity for us to really look at the action points to take us to a two-state solution. I know that there are many who seem to think that the two-state solution is fading, but this is not what Guyana believes, and this is not what the majority of the United Nations member states believe, as evidenced by the vote for the recognition of Palestine as a full member of the UN. That said, the scale of destruction in Gaza, the starvation of the people, and what we are told by the head of OCHA, Mr. Tom Fletcher, is that time is really running out. Well, we're talking about an entire people. And I do not think that because the objective of one state is in the opposite direction of the objective of the United Nations, that we should succumb to what we've decided. And so I think that regardless of what is happening, and we condemn all that is happening, the continued and multiple displacement of people in Gaza, but we cannot give up on the two-state solution. We strongly believe that without the two-state solution, this cycle of violence will continue. We believe that the UN has proven itself through UNRWA to be able to provide the necessary assistance. In fact, it is a lifeline for the people in Gaza. We know the situation with UNRWA right now, but let us not forget that UNRWA exists because we have not gotten to the two-state solution, and we have to continue to push forward in that regard. But from the information that we have, the alternative that has been put forward, which will be controlled by the Israeli military, is not one that can work. The initiative by the Secretary General, I think, is one that we all should continue to be involved with. We should look back, now that the UN will be 80 years old, at the core mandate of the UN. And I think it offers us the opportunity, the situation we find ourselves in today, to look back there and to see how best we can deliver on that mandate, given the shrinkage of resources, but also given the disregard for international law in some sections of our world. And so UN 80, I think, is a time not just for celebration, but also a time for reflection. But let us not forget that the United Nations is us, the member states. And the Secretary General is putting forward his initiative on how we can make the UN more fit for purpose. And it is up to the member states how fast we also move with reform of other aspects of the UN. The Security Council, for example, is one of the reforms that I think is needed. And some may be a bit pessimistic, given that we're over 3 decades working on this. But I think we also have an opportunity now. The fact that we are not being able to prevent conflicts as we should, and the fact that we're seeing an increase in conflicts, the fact that we are seeing the ballooning of humanitarian needs, and the fact that development is not progressing as it should, we are not going to be able to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 as we had planned. And so I think that it is up to us member states to make this reform go forward. I'm very much aware that reform of the financial architecture. For example, the global financial architecture requires decisions in other theaters, not necessarily in the UN, but the UN is the moral voice for the world, and we can bring to bear pressure for those kinds of reform. And I think that we have been doing a fairly good job as UN member states, especially the developing world, but we have to see concrete results. Well, I think we need the best person for the job. And if we look at the hall of photographs of the former Secretaries General and of course our current Secretary General, we would see that there's no estrogen there. Maybe it's time. In 1899, there was an arbitral award that settled our boundary with Venezuela. Both countries accepted. Venezuela insisted that we demarcate that boundary as soon as possible, which was done. And the question for the ICJ is just whether that award is valid. We believe it is because it was an arbitral award that stood for 60 years until Venezuela raised it. And so we await what the ICJ will say about that. The second point that you raised on these planned elections by Venezuela, it actually would be a joke if it was not this serious, because you're talking about territory from another country. Guyana is in full control of our Essequibo region. And what we have said, as it's rightfully so, whether it's a Guyanese or a Venezuelan living in our territory that participates in that election, for us it would be treasonous. The United States and Guyana, we have had strong relations for a very long time. The United States is our largest trading partner. It is the home for our largest diaspora. We have had collaboration in several areas, and we have had investment in several areas. Our Essequibo region is 2/3 of Guyana, and so the investments that we have in Guyana would be from a long list of countries. But we will, as a government, do everything we can to protect our country, our territorial integrity and our sovereignty, and we will certainly be collaborating with our allies to do that. June is one of the busiest of the months for the Security Council, and on our program of work, we have 16 mandated meetings, and included in that is the open debate on children in armed conflict. In addition to that will be our signature event. And this time Guyana would like to put the spotlight on poverty, underdevelopment, and conflict, and the implications of that for the maintenance of international peace and security. What we are witnessing right now is a regression on development, an increase in conflicts, and as we know, investment in development is investment in prevention. And I think that it is time that we look at this further. It is not a new subject. Other members of the Council have held similar events in the past, including China and Brazil, and so we intend to further interrogate this relationship as we go forward. As you know, it's also the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. And so we believe that it is timely to put a spotlight in this, given the 3 pillars of the United Nations. In retrospect, the most exciting moment was when we got elected. We were, I guess, oblivious to what awaited us in the Security Council. But I think that what I have found in the Council is that we all, of course, as you know, represent our countries, our national standpoints. One of the things that I think I will take with me, and I know that we have 6 more months to go, though, is Guyana's membership in the A3+, and how we operated with the 3 African countries. I think that perhaps now is not the time, but perhaps history will judge that formation by Africa for the 3 African countries to represent a single African position on the majority of issues in the Security Council. And also Guyana, coming from another part of the world but with strong historical ties, joining with Africa in that respect, I think is something that we do not underestimate at all, and it's something I will take with me. Every country brings its own perspective to the Security Council. And I think that when you look at small states in the UN, I would like to describe the collective of small states as the moral compass of the UN. Our concerns and our objectives, I would say, relate to our smallness, where multilateralism is our refuge, where the Charter is our military. But when you're on the Security Council, you also have the opportunity to share with the larger powers that are on the Council some of the real issues that can contribute to a lack of maintenance of international peace and security. The issue of climate change, for example. And as you know, Guyana brought focus to this in our first signature event when we held the presidency last time, looking at climate in relation to food insecurity and conflict. And so I think that there is a lot we can contribute when it comes to the decision making. We know that there's the veto there in the Council, but I do not think that we should resign ourselves to say that it is only the big powers that control what happens in the world. Of course, it's desirous for us, for the big powers, to have a good relationship amongst themselves too, because I think that is when we see quite a bit of stability in the world.